What's up, everybody? Welcome to On West Gray, the monthly podcast for all things local government in the city of Norman. I'm your host, Tiffany Verska, Chief Communications Officer for the city of Norman, and we appreciate you tuning in. Today in the studio with us, we have Lisa Krieg, CDBG Grants Manager at the city of Norman. Lisa wears many, many hats and is here to talk with us today about some recent projects that she has going on for the community. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I've been listening to these for quite some time, and I was just wondering when my number was coming up.
All right. Well, it's your lucky day. Bryce and I are so happy to have you in the studio. Thank you. So CDBG, or the Community Development Block Grant Program, trying to say that a little slow so I don't stumble on my words here. It's a federal program of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development that supports development activities at a local level to building strong and resilient communities, which is an absolute mouthful. So can you break down for us what that is and what you do in your capacity day-to-day in serving Norman residents?
Certainly. CDBG is part of the government alphabet soup.
All right.
It couples with the HOME, H-O-M-E program. The city receives both of those funds by entitlement once Congress passes a budget. Very large formula. We get letters saying how much money. But the beauty of the CDBG program is that it is entirely citizen-driven. We have a citizen oversight committee made up of people that live within the neighborhoods we work, as well as at large, and we meet for about 6 months of the year talking about improvements that need to be made, things that would be nice. Of course, we can't always do all of those, but the really interesting piece is you get to know these citizens. And, you know, like this morning, on every Friday morning, there's a coffee group that meets. And so I meet with them and hear what their issues are within the neighborhoods. But what that also does is it gives the people in these neighborhoods a conduit to one person in the city they can call. And it's not that we can fix everything, but we can usually track down who they need to talk to and then refer them to that person. So we were talking about on-street parking this morning. Obviously, the CDBG program doesn't have anything to do, but we were able to get them to the right person to where they could find out what needed to be. And it's solving these small problems that these neighbors have that seem relatively small in the whole scheme of 130,000 people in the city of Norman, but it is a huge issue for them. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times people will call not really knowing what the question is. And so they end up getting bounced around to lots of departments while we're trying to figure it out what it is. So the CDBG program is great in that way. The other thing is because we have that conduit, there are a lot of things that come up that we cannot address with the program, but it gives that toehold into the city to where they can be addressed in the overall budget process, such as for years over on Miller and Peters, the curbs were deteriorated. Lots of traffic up and down that street, large trucks coming in and out, as well as the street had been overlaid time and time again, that the curbs were actually about an inch tall. And so when it would rain, there was stormwater issues. Right. Brought up year after year within the process of meeting with the neighborhoods. Obviously, the scope of that was much larger than what we could do, but we were able to get the information to the council member, which was Councilmember Hall at the time, and was able to get that project within the city budget. That never would have happened if it would have just been one person calling over and over and over. Right. But collectively working with these neighborhoods, it helps to give them more of a voice in the things that impact them in their daily lives.
So are there neighborhoods of focus that you work with, or is it clear across the city, or how does that work?
It is, we do, some of our programs are citywide, such as our housing rehabilitation program, because that is tied to the actual income of the owner-occupant. And so that program we can do within the city limits of Norman. The neighborhood-specific stuff, we have what's called a target area. And based on census data, it is a neighborhood, a census block group, whereas 51% of the households have an income of 80% or less median income. HUD does the calculation for us. Primarily, there are 5 neighborhoods in the core that have historically been our target area. We are pivoting into what is called a Strong Neighborhoods Initiative, to where we're really going to focus on 3 of those neighborhoods. Lots of neighborhood organization, as well as working on very, very small projects, but again, that make a huge impact to the people that live in those neighborhoods. Each of them have a small neighborhood park. And having just gone through the budget process, you see the list of capital projects. Well, these are 50 by 140 parks. They serve the neighborhood. They usually do not even have a parking lot. And they're relatively low down on the whole city priority because there are so many of them. But with the block grant program, we're able to meet with the neighbors and find out what their wants, needs, and desires are for these parks. For instance, McGeorge Park, they wanted to be able to take some of the green space that they had and have a pollinator garden that the neighborhood would maintain. I'm very excited about that. We got our bids back yesterday, and so that's going to be going forward. The neighborhood is just beyond themselves.
Oh, fun.
With excitement that this is original town site. It's the original town site of Norman, so it's the oldest neighborhood that we have, which it's having a little bit of a revitalization. A lot of younger people have moved in there, and they're really wanting to do things together as a neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And so in addition to the pollinator garden, we're going to put some other adult-oriented equipment in there. It's got a really nice play set for the kids, but they really want some more adult activities for the park.
And a lot of the neighborhoods, correct me if I'm wrong, but these older, the town sites and what have you, they may not have their own HOAs. So it's almost like they're creating or operating in that capacity to have those beautification projects and those upgrades, which is really cool.
Right. We had Old Silk Stocking, which is a neighborhood just north of City Hall here, formally organized last year with the Voluntary Neighborhood Association. That's the first one that we have done in years and years and years. Original Townside is meeting next week to vote on theirs. Their bylaws, they'll file with the Secretary of State and become official and elect officers and all of that. First Courthouse is right behind them. They're working on that also.
So you get to have a huge hand in kind of guiding that process and helping with the organization of that?
Yeah, working with Neighborhood Alliance that the city has a contract with, we make sure that their bylaws are doing what they need to do and that they understand what it means to be a voluntary neighborhood organization, as well as they understand the benefits of it in that now they have this collective voice of a couple hundred people that live in this neighborhood that can then speak out on issues or support issues as they come up.
Oh, that is so awesome. So how long have you been with the city of Norman, and have you always been in your current position?
So next month, July 5th, I wrap up 40 years with the city of Norman.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Thank you. I started in 1984 with a freshly minted architecture degree I did not know what to do with. It was not a bustling economic time in Oklahoma. Penn Square Bank had just failed. The oil boom was gone bust. Needless to say, there were no architecture jobs. There was a position a friend of mine told me about here as a housing rehabilitation specialist, writing construction specifications, supervising small projects on owner-occupied homes. And so I thought, well, I'll do that for a few years, then I'll go get a real job. And so I did that for 15 years, loved it. We still have that program. I spent lots of time sitting in people's kitchens and dining rooms, sipping on weak iced tea, talking about their houses, hearing about all their kids and grandkids. We had several people that each year at Christmas, they'd call us up and tell us to come by, that they'd made cookies for us. And while you're here, can you rehang my shower curtain? Lots of that. But Keith Patello that worked with me, who's retired now, we really enjoyed it. It was unique in that the CDBG program by right can work on private property, unlike the city of Norman with our capital funds. And so you really spend a lot of time getting to know these people. Some of the same people still call for occasional assistance. Program has evolved over the years, did that for about 15 years. Then I was promoted into what they called the grants planner, that I learned how to do the environmental reviews, the applications, kind of the paperwork part of it. And then after 15 years of that, I was promoted into this position when Linda Price retired. And so I've had the benefit of great people to mentor me throughout my career here, not just in the block grant program, but the planning department and, the city staff as a whole.
So I was not lying when I said that you have worn and are still wearing many hats.
And it's funny that just the amount of, historic stuff that floats around in the back of your head.
Institutional
that you may
knowledge.
not have been involved with, but you remember when it happened. And so you're like, oh, yeah. So.
Well, that's awesome. So what would you say is the most interesting part about your job?
Oh, the variety. Such as this morning I met with neighborhood people. Every Friday morning we have coffee and I just listen to them. I will meet with bankers talking about potential home buyer programs. Lots of just working with other departments. The AIM process is going on right now, which is amazing. Having gone through this multiple times, this is a huge endeavor for the city.
Yes, and for listeners, that's our comprehensive planning process that's ongoing.
Yeah, the AIM Area Infrastructure Master Planning process. That is not just the land use, it's all of these other plans that have always been there, but they've never really talked to each other. And so now, for once, this will be a true comprehensive plan. What I'm really excited about is the housing plan that's coming out of that. We have never had a strategic housing plan. And so it's letting us take a good look at the housing opportunities within the city, where the gaps are, where the overlaps are, where it's just plain missing in some areas, and trying to come up with a strategy that, even though the city itself really doesn't influence this, we can have policies that will allow for housing development across all income spectrums. I in no way fault a developer for building a $500,000 custom home, but we need to figure out a way that we can get more of affordable or workforce affordability type housing within this community to support everybody within the community.
Right, absolutely. And you commented on something there when you're talking about folks talking to each other and doing the coffee and working with different departments that we discuss a lot of times here in our communications office. And I think that's community relations. And it's so hard to measure that, in comparison to some other divisions. They can say, we laid this many miles of concrete, or we picked up this many tons of trash, and you can kind of quantify that. But with some of what you and I do, there's not a way to really quantify the value. How important would you say that community relations is in local government?
Oh, very important, because it is the most tangible form of government to the people that live within the community. It's approachable, should be approachable. And I think that the community relations part really gives people that level of comfort of being able to approach not just staff, but a council member or the mayor or the manager about an issue that they may be having.
Yes, and just works to build transparency and trust and, put faces to names. I love that part about it. So I love that we share that. So what projects have you been working on recently? We've had a lot of traction on a certain affordable housing project. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
You bet. I'd be more than happy to. It was hard keeping it a secret, I'll tell you that much. Crimson Flats is a development that is going to be constructed at the corner of Oakhurst and Imhoff. About a year ago, the city purchased the parcel. Currently, it's being prepped for construction. We worked with the council. I say we, it was primarily Anthony from the Assistant City Attorney's Office and I got the call from the manager that council had set aside substantial sum of money from the ARPA award to be put towards affordable housing. We pursued a couple different things that really didn't pan out, and then we decided that let's just really try to leverage these funds instead of just spending them. So we worked with a consulting firm out of Oklahoma City, DeBruler and Associates, to help us package an RFP to attract a tax credit developer. And so using that, I think it's about $5.5 million as leverage, we were able to do an RFP. We had 6 proposals. We were completely shocked. We selected Gorman Property Management as the applicant. They were very sensitive to the site in that it abuts a neighborhood, and so it has a very minimal impact to that neighborhood. As part of the process, we went ahead and rezoned the property, and throughout that, we rezoned it as affordable housing. And so I'm proud to say that we went through pre-development planning commission as well as city council with no protest. And I think that is because that we were very transparent with what we were doing. We met with the neighborhood and explained what was going on. It helped that Linda Price lives in that neighborhood, and so she understood and was able to talk to her neighbors about that. And it just shows that if you're very transparent and you're very detailed on what you're going to do, it's not always going to come out in opposition to that. So we were awarded $14.5 million of tax credit funding. The money that the city is utilizing is being done as a low-interest loan to the developer as gap financing. It will come back to the city over a period of 10 years, and we are working currently with council to establish an affordable housing trust fund. So when those funds come back in, we can do this again.
That's awesome. And for those who may not be familiar, I think there may be some confusion out there. Can you speak further to what affordable housing is and what it is not?
Okay. I say affordable housing has 2 definitions. There's the capital A and the capital H, affordable housing, which means that it receives some sort of a government regulation or subsidy in that the housing is developed for households up to 80% income, that they will not be paying more than 30% of their income towards housing. So that's a lot of numbers. And that is either done with a development subsidy to the developer to bring the price of development down, or a subsidy to the tenant, such as Section 8. And sometimes it's both. And so this project will be the first, whereas a subsidy is being made to the developer by the low interest loan from the city and the tax credits. There is no rental assistance really associated with a low-income housing tax credit project. It's just the rents are affordable. They can accept Section 8. Actually, they must accept Section 8, which is the other big piece of this, that as a LIHTC project, they're required to accept Section 8 if someone has a voucher. The little a, little h is the affordable housing that most of the public is looking at, in that it needs to be affordable to what your income is. And so everybody has that different threshold. You know, the goal, depending on if it's a mortgage, they're looking at about 40%. But everybody has to be comfortable with what they're paying for their housing cost. And obviously, different incomes have different levels of comfortableness. Last week, the manager had asked me to go to a conference in Dallas on housing, and they had a new term I was not familiar with. We always talk affordable housing, workforce housing, market rate housing. Well, they have added what they're calling attainable housing, and that is workforce housing in that it's for households that are between 80 and 120%. And a lot of times that would require because things are just so dang expensive these days, would require some sort of a subsidy to the developer to bring that development cost down to where they can afford to rent it or sell it at that attainable price range, but it really does not have an ongoing subsidy.
Got you.
So,
and affordable housing, attainable housing, workforce housing, in no way, this is very different from what a shelter would be, correct?
Oh, definitely. You know, a shelter is a very it's a facility that's very transient in nature. Pretty much falls under the zoning regulation of like a hotel, that it could be one night, it could be 5 nights. And then, of course, there's all kinds of different levels of shelters that can be provided. Low barrier, like we have, a little higher barrier, and then there are even the highest barrier shelters that some communities have.
Understood. So what would you most like people to know about planning and community development, or what you do in general?
Every day's a new day. But, I am a firm follower of Malcolm Gladwell when he talks about, that 10,000 hour threshold, that once you have been doing a job for 10,000 hours, that's when you really realize that you know what you're doing. I've been very blessed, as I said, to have great people that I've worked with throughout these years. Of course, I hit 10,000 hours years ago. But every day I am amazed at the dedicated group of people that work for the city. I know that a lot of people just kind of snub their nose at us, but it's interesting because everybody here comes in every day to do the best that they can do and love this community and want to make it better. So, and the support that the CDBG program, my staff and myself, that we have received from the planning department, Jane Hudson, planning director, is amazing to work with. Daryl, the ideas that he comes up with are amazing, and, they're exciting to run with. And so, like I said, every day is a new day, and it never gets boring around here.
It does not. And to your point, when you said, folks are coming in every day just trying to do the best that they can to serve Norman, I have to share with you. So our Citizens Academy will be starting again, the 2024 program next month. And to illustrate what you said, I just love when we put this program on because all of the departments, each week, the Academy participants, they meet with a different department.
Right.
And the departments do not fall short of making it a competition. I mean, it's just, they brought cookies. Well, I'm going to bring cake for them. And they did this. Well, I'm going to do that. And it's just, it's fun. And they're volunteering in many ways and in many capacities. Like, they don't have to be here from that 5:30 to 7:30, 5:30 to 8:30, but they all want to come. Every single person in this division or department will show up, and they want to be a part of this process, and they want to engage with folks. And I've just been blown away by that.
Yeah, and being on the side of the department that pulls this stuff together, it's amazing what we learn about ourselves. Planning has multiple divisions that do lots of different things. And this last year, I was like, oh, I forgot about that.
Yes, it's a really good refresher.
I almost think that we need to have a Citizens Academy, but the employees need to show up. And we just kind of do the dog and pony show for each other.
Oh, my gosh, that would be fun. Well, is there anything else, Lisa, that you would like to add or share with our listeners?
Not really. It's been a pleasure being here, and it's exciting to listen to these things and the level of information that you've brought up with this department, with the citizens being able to see everything that's going on. I think it's raised that veil, I think a lot of people just kind of go, oh, the city, but they don't really understand that we're part of them.
Absolutely, 100%. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for joining us this morning. Questions or commentary about On West Gray can be sent into publicaffairs@normanok.gov. Shouts to our producer and editor, Mr. Bryce Holland of the City of Norman Communications Office. Visit normanok.gov/Norman-news to enroll in email notifications for city PSAs, traffic advisories, and more. Until next time, stay engaged, stay informed, and always remember to cast your ballot. I'm Tiffany Verska. Thank you for joining us on West Gray.